All right, today we're diving into the story of a man whose travels are so epic, they're almost unbelievable. I mean, this guy completely rewrites what we think we know about the pre-modern world. Okay, let's just start with this number, 117,000 kilometers. That's, what, over 70,000 miles? We're talking about the estimated distance one guy traveled back in the 14th century. And this wasn't a quick trip. It took him almost 30 years. And to really wrap your head around that, take a look at this. It's not even close. He traveling more than double the distance of the famous Admiral Zheng He. And look at Marco Polo, who we all know about. Our guy went nearly 5 times farther. The scale here is it's mind-blowing. So the big question is, right, who was this person? And how on earth was a feat like this even possible back then? Well, it turns out the answer boils down to 2, let's call them advantages. Okay, his name was Ibn Battuta, and his success wasn't just because he was tough or had incredible stamina. Nope, it was because he had a secret weapon. Actually, more like 2 of them. So his first advantage? It was the world he was living in. He traveled almost entirely within what's known as the Dar al-Islam, the abode of Islam. And you shouldn't think of this as a bunch of separate countries. It was more like a huge interconnected civilization. It was this vast network where you had shared laws, a common language for scholars, Arabic, and critically, all this institutional support already in place. And this really gets into the nitty-gritty of why that was so important. See, he wasn't just some lone guy wandering in the wilderness. He could hook up with organized caravans for safety. He could walk into a court thousands of miles from home and find a legal system he understood. And he could tap into this shared sense of community, the Ummah, which basically guaranteed that a fellow Muslim scholar would get a warm welcome pretty much anywhere he showed up. All right, now for his second secret weapon, his job. He was born back in 1304 in Tangier, Morocco, and he trained to be a Qadi. That's an Islamic judge. And you have to understand, this wasn't just any old job. It was like having a golden ticket. It was a career that was portable, super valuable, and respected literally everywhere in the Islamic world. And this is really the key to the whole thing. His trip started out as a pilgrimage to Mecca, a religious journey, but it quickly turned into something else entirely. It became a career. He figured out he could use his legal smarts to land these amazing jobs, get powerful people like sultans and governors to support him, and basically fund a life of travel across the entire known world. So this career path, it took him to some incredible highs, but it also brought him right to the edge of total disaster. And funnily enough, he found both of those extremes in the exact same place, India. So, in 1334, he rolls into Delhi and gets appointed Grand Qadi by the Sultan, a guy named Muhammad bin Tughlaq. On one hand, this job made him fabulously wealthy and super important. On the other hand, the Sultan was, well, let's just say he was unpredictable and dangerous. So Ibn Battuta is living this life of luxury, but he's also constantly looking over his shoulder, genuinely fearing for his life. And this just perfectly sums up the chaos he was living in. The Sultan gives him an out, appointing him to lead this big diplomatic mission to China. But look what happens. It's a total disaster, step by step. He's loaded up with all these insane gifts, then he gets ambushed by rebels, and then, to top it all off, he's shipwrecked and loses every last thing. There was no way he could go back empty-handed. That would have been a death sentence. So what does he do? He runs. Okay, so after that whole India fiasco, he manages to regroup, travel some more around Asia, and eventually heads for home. But was he done? Nope, not even close. He sets off on one final epic journey, this time heading south into West Africa, to the legendary Mali Empire. And why Mali? Well, everyone in the world knew it was famous for one thing: gold. And what he wrote down gives us this incredible, priceless snapshot of the West African economy. Imagine this. He's watching these massive caravans lugging giant slabs of salt, which was super valuable, all the way from mines in the north, across the Sahara Desert. And then they trade it, almost weight for weight, for gold from the south. It's wild. But on a personal level, Ibn Battuta was kind of disappointed. He called the ruler a miserly king because he didn't get the crazy lavish gifts he'd gotten used to elsewhere. But the gold, or lack of it, wasn't his biggest surprise, not by a long shot. He experienced what he basically called juristic shock, a total legal culture shock. See, he's this very conservative, by-the-book judge, and the culture in Mali, which mixed Islam with older traditions, just blew his mind. Everything he knew said inheritance passed from father to son, but here, it went through the mother's side. He was just floored by how casual men and women were with each other, even if they weren't married. And he even wrote that women there were often more respected than men. For him, this was just a whole different world. So after 29 years, just think about that, 29 years, Ibn Battuta finally goes home for good. And the Sultan of Morocco hears about his adventures and is just completely fascinated. So much so that he orders him to sit down and create an official record of everything he saw. And what came out of that was his masterpiece, the Rihla, which literally just means the journey. But here's the absolutely crucial part you have to remember. He dictated this whole thing from memory, years after it all happened. So this isn't a day-by-day diary he was keeping on the road. It's a story, shaped and polished with a professional writer, Ibn Juzay, to be an entertaining travelogue for people back home. And because of that, modern historians, they have to look at this text with a critical eye. It's not that they think he's lying, but they have to investigate. This table kind of lays out the main debates. There's some evidence he might have borrowed descriptions of places he didn't know well from other books, and there are some pretty big questions about whether he really went as far into China as he said he did. It's a perfect example of how history isn't just a set of facts. It's an ongoing investigation. But even with all those debates, the general agreement among experts is pretty clear. The Rihla might not be a perfect word-for-word diary, but it is an incredibly important piece of history. I mean, for some of these places, especially regions like West Africa and the Maldives, his account is literally the only written record we have from that time period. Without it, we'd know almost nothing. So let's circle back. Putting him side by side with someone like Marco Polo really drives the point home, doesn't it? It makes his place in history just crystal clear. You can look at any metric you want, the sheer distance, why he was traveling, the world he was moving through, and it's obvious. Ibn Battuta was just playing in a totally different league. And that, right there, is the real takeaway. That's why this matters. His story just rips the curtain back and shows us this vibrant, deeply connected world across Africa, Europe, and Asia that was humming along long before Europeans started their age of exploration. It really makes you stop and think, doesn't it? Whose stories have we decided are the main stories of world history? So when all is said and done, what we're left with is this incredible window into a different kind of globalization, one that wasn't powered by Western chips, but by shared faith, law, and trade. And that leaves us with a really important question to chew on. What other amazing stories and what other whole worlds have been completely left off the map?